Carolyn Bennett checked the address on the crumpled telegram one more time. Her hands trembled slightly in the cold mountain air as snow began to fall around her. She'd traveled 3 weeks by train and stagecoach to reach Montana, coming all the way from Pennsylvania to marry a man she'd only known through letters. Thomas Wheeler, a rancher who needed a wife, a mother for his young daughter. But as she stood there in her blue wedding dress, the one she'd seen herself during the long journey west, Carolyn couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The ranch before her didn't match Thomas's descriptions. He'd written about flat grazing land. This property was nestled in a valley, surrounded by mountains dusted with early winter snow. A tall man emerged from the barn, his duster coat swaying as he walked. He wore a brown leather vest over a cream-colored shirt, and his cowboy hat was pulled low against the wind. He stopped when he saw her, his expression shifting from surprise to concern. "Ma'am, are you lost?" he called out, approaching carefully. Carolyn's throat tightened. "I'm looking for the Wheeler Ranch. Thomas Wheeler sent for me. We're meant to be married today." The man's face softened with understanding and something that looked like sadness. "I'm sorry to tell you this, but the Wheeler Ranch is 15 miles south of here. This is the Blackwood property. I'm James Blackwood." Carolyn felt the world tilt beneath her feet. All this way, all this hope, and she'd gotten off at the wrong station, hired the wrong guide. "I don't understand." "The man in town said there are 2 stations," James explained gently. "You must have gotten off at Silver Creek instead of Silver Falls." Easy mistake for someone new to the territory. Before Carolyn could respond, the door to the cabin burst open. A little girl, no more than 6 years old, came running out. She wore a brown vest over a cream blouse and a blue skirt that matched Carolyn's dress almost exactly. Her brown hair was pulled back with a ribbon, and her face lit up with pure joy. "Papa, Papa, is she here? Is she really here?" The child ran through the snow, stopping just short of Carolyn. Her eyes widened as she took in the wedding dress, the veil, the traveling trunk beside her. "You came. You actually came." James moved to his daughter's side, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Ma, sweetheart, this lady into." But Emma wasn't listening. She stepped forward and took Carolyn's gloved hand in both of hers, looking up with tears streaming down her rosy cheeks. "God finally sent you to us," she whispered. "I've been praying every single night." Carolyn felt her heart crack open. She knelt down in the snow, her dress pooling around her, bringing herself eye to eye with this precious child. "Sweetheart, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm meant to marry someone else." Emma's face crumpled, but she held tight to Carolyn's hand. "But you're wearing a wedding dress, and you're here, on a ranch, on the date I wished for most." James cleared his throat, and Carolyn could hear the emotion in it. "Emma's mother passed 2 years ago. Ever since, she's been asking for a new mama. I've tried to explain that it doesn't work that way." But his voice broke slightly. Carolyn looked up at this man, this widower trying to raise his daughter alone in this harsh, beautiful country. She saw the lines of grief around his eyes, but also the tenderness in the way he looked at his child. There was something decent about him, something solid and true. "The next stage doesn't come through for 3 days," James said quietly. "You're welcome to stay here until then. I'll take you to the Wheeler Ranch myself. It's the least I can do." That evening, Carolyn sat by the fire while Emma showed her a worn doll and chattered about the ranch. James made a simple supper of venison stew and biscuits. The cabin was modest but clean, with touches that spoke of a woman's hand. Long ago curtains at the windows, dried flowers in a jar. "Mama used to sing to me," Emma said softly, hurled against Carolyn's side. "Do you know any songs?" Carolyn did. She sang the old hymns her own mother had taught her, and watched as Emma's eyes grew heavy. When the child finally slept, James carried her to her small bed in the corner. "I apologize for putting you in this position," he said when he returned. "Emma's been lonely. I do my best, but I'm just rancher. I don't know how to braid hair right or tell stories the way her mother did." "You're doing more than your best," Carolyn replied. "Any child can see they're loved. That's what matters most." Over the next 2 days, something shifted in Carolyn's heart. She helped Emma feed the chickens, taught her a new song, mended a tear in James's work shirt. She watched him with his daughter, saw his patience and gentleness. She learned he'd built this ranch with his own hands, that he read poetry in the evenings, that he loved his wife deeply and mourned her still. On the morning of the third day, when they should have left for the Wheeler Ranch, Carolyn stood in the yard watching Emma play in the fresh snow. James came to stand beside her. "I need to ask you something that might sound crazy," he said quietly. "These past few days, watching you with Emma, seeing you here, it's felt right, more right than anything has in 2 years." Carolyn's heart began to race. "I know you came here for another man," James continued. "I know you have an agreement, but if there's any part of you that felt what I felt these past days, any part that might consider—" He stopped, shaking his head. "I'm sorry." "You have a commitment." "It was wrong of me to say anything." Carolyn turned to face him fully. She thought about Thomas Wheeler, a man she'd never met, waiting 15 miles south. She thought about the careful letters they'd exchanged, the practical arrangement they'd made. Then she thought about the way Emma had taken her hand, the whispered prayer answered, the feeling of coming home to a place she'd never been. "I felt it too," she said softly. "From the moment Emma said those words, something in my heart recognized this place, recognized both of you." James's eyes widened with hope. "You'd consider staying here with us?" "I came west to start a new life," Carolyn said. "Maybe God just had a different address in mind than the one I was holding." Emma must have sensed the shift because she came running over. "Are you going away today?" she asked, her voice small and frightened. Carolyn knelt down and cupped the child's cold cheek in her hand. "What if I stayed instead? What if we became a family, the three of us?" Emma threw her arms around Carolyn's neck with such force they both nearly toppled into the snow. "I knew it. I knew God would send you to the right place." That afternoon, they drove into Silver Creek together. Carolyn sent a telegram to Thomas Wheeler with an honest explanation and her sincere apologies. She hoped he'd understand, hoped he'd find the right woman for him. She left it to him to decide about her trunk, still waiting at the wrong station. A week later, Carolyn and James were married in the small church in town. Emma stood between them, holding both their hands, wearing a new dress Carolyn had made from fabric James had ridden 20 miles to buy. As they stood in the snow outside their cabin that evening, Carolyn in her blue wedding dress that had finally found its purpose, she understood something profound. Life's greatest blessings often arrive through detours. The wrong address had led her to the right home. A little girl's whispered prayer had been answered not despite the mistake, but because of it. "Thank you for getting lost," James said softly, pulling both his girls close. Carolyn smiled, watching the snow fall on the mountains that now felt like hers. "Thank you for being found," she replied.